You're listening to Masters Decoded podcast series. I'm your host and the chief decoder, Anis Merchant. Through this podcast, I bring in guests who are successful in a different walk of life to decode and map out their careers and journeys with the hope that we gain all our learnings. The world around us is changing exponentially, and how the impact of artificial intelligence, technology, and other socio-economic factors have either influenced or enhanced my guests' careers. In today's episode, my next guest is Brandon Rhoten. I first met Brandon about 4 months ago, where I had an opportunity to have a fireside chat with him. I was very impressed with his achievements to date, and I could see the audience thoroughly enjoyed his perspective on marketing. Brandon is a marketeer who loves building iconic brands, often though modernizing for the digital age. Currently a primary change agent for Potbelly, a publicly traded sandwich shop with nearly 500 locations and $450 million in revenue that's needed a turnaround for a few years. Formerly VP in charge of advertising, media, digital, and social media at Wendy's. He developed the holistic marketing strategy for Wendy's, shifting focus from older and deal-driven to younger, equity-driven with an emphasis on social media and digital marketing. The work Brandon has led has been lauded by Forbes, Spin, Fast Company, Ad Age, Digiday, Wall Street Journal, and Adweek, and has won dozens of awards including Cannes Lions, Clio's, Effie's, One Show, Adweek Watch, US Hispanic Idea Awards, and Facebook Studio Awards. Brandon is a proud father of 3, an avid outdoorsman, active in his church, and is happily married to his amazingly strong, cancer-surviving high school sweetheart, Lauren. Hi Brandon, thanks for taking time out and joining the Masters Decoded podcast series. Welcome.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Brandon, you and I have had conversation about 3 or 4 months ago in Chicago in one of the conference, and it was pretty impressive about your career, your achievements. And talking about achievements, you've had 43 honors and awards till date. I've done a little bit sneak peek on your LinkedIn profile. What do you owe it to, and whom do you owe it to?
Yeah, I owe it to working with amazing teams and brands that are willing to take a bet on sort of a modern approach to marketing. Been very fortunate that sought out people with excellent talents, and those folks have brought those talents to bear for us to bring work into the world that's compelling. And I'd be remiss to not point out that partners like Facebook and Twitter and platforms actually really encouraged us to experiment, encouraged us to be more human, encouraged us to follow our guts versus the conventions that were out in the world for traditional marketing that oftentimes water down messages or make them very vanilla and not compelling. So I think it's great teams and great partners really are what allow us to receive so much recognition and success.
I recently saw the new platform which you launched at Potbelly, and also a small video which your team put together. That was also impressive. If people haven't watched it, they should definitely. If they haven't ordered yet on the Potbelly platform, they should. So how did that come about? How did that idea come about for you and for your team?
So yeah, this is one of those unprecedented moments sort of in history where everyone's having to adapt to a new reality, and brands are no different. So for us, the majority of our sales happen from a dine-in occasion, people showing up for their break for lunch. And when you're not going to the office, you're not going to go to your break for lunch. So a huge portion of our sales just evaporated overnight. So that led the team to iterate on what are ways we can recoup some of those sales, but also help people who are in this new reality where they're working from home for the first time, or they don't have something familiar like the lunch break that they're used to available to them because of the new circumstances. That led us to this idea of Potbelly Pantry. A few others have followed suit shortly after we did, and one or two were experimenting sort of as we were concepting and testing. but really it's selling bulk items that come from the shop and allowing you to recreate sort of the in-shop experience using your own oven, using your own kitchen. So, not necessarily a breakthrough idea that's going to change the world, and not an idea that frankly will probably continue much past this particular circumstance, but it does allow us to recoup some revenue for the brand, keep people employed, which is really our priority, is make sure our employees have a place to go to get their paycheck, and past all that, give people that moment of a break at home, and a familiar thing, an activity to do, and a familiar outcome of wonderful food that they're used to and love and look forward to, whether at their office, sort of all wrapped into a program. And we actually just, expanded it. We've added to it even since we launched the initial program, because it has been so successful.
I'll think about something which, if you're comfortable, you can answer. You may now entering a space which will be a different competition, like selling meat and selling breads, which was never your business model. And now you will have a different set of competition, and competition will say, hey, these guys are selling bread and meat, which is not sandwich. And people who've been traditional bread suppliers or meat suppliers, they will start looking at what you're doing. So how do you perceive that?
Yeah, so I view what we're doing right now as temporary, just to survive the issue. We don't intend to be a grocer. That's not our model. That's not what we're good at. That's not what, frankly, we can be efficient at. But champions adjust, and that's kind of where we're at right now. Is we're adjusting to fit the environment that we're in. So I do think we are going to get some pressure from folks that we might not have otherwise. The pizza guys didn't pay any attention to us for delivery. We were just too small in their world. We didn't have grocers paying any attention to us. But I think everybody understands at this moment that you got to be scrappy to survive, and I think that's what we're doing.
You've built your career in marketing right from undergrad and from your graduation days. And if I looked at your profile, you really started off marketing. Has that been your dream profile or the work stream and you get excited with?
Yeah, actually, I went to college to be a doctor. So I was a biology major through most of college, and changed my mind about 2/3 of the way through, just because I hated chemistry. So I loved biology, but I hated chemistry. I hated actually the math of chemistry is really what I hated. I was okay at it. It drove me nuts. So the reason I pivoted to marketing was the thing I loved about biology was the cause and effect. It was the idea that you could experiment with something, you could learn about how something evolves over time, about how people's and organisms' behaviors are influenced by their environments. Like the fascination was really around the creatures and how they responded to stimuli more than anything else for me. And marketing actually was a really easy fit for that, believe it or not. What marketing's intention is to communicate something that causes you to take an action. That's its primary purpose, right? And most people are actually really bad at it. Most companies are really bad at it. Most companies that use marketing do so as a blunt instrument. It's not really built to cause a direct reaction or a measurable reaction or a reaction that you can sustain over time. So short answer is no. I kind of found my way into marketing by accident when I decided I didn't like chemistry. Ended up working full-time in marketing through college, starting in my sophomore year, because I needed a job. And it sort of was that's where I learned that marketing was a thing that would be interesting. And as I finished out I got to my second-ish year, third-ish year in biology, I said, I'm not into chemistry, but this other thing I've been doing on the side actually kind of itches the same need. So so no, it was not something I really jumped into thinking it was the right thing to do.
Biology to marketing and food industry, there is some linkage with biology and food for sure. So entering the food industry, which you've been now part of for the last decade, was that an accident or was it a cautious decision which you took?
Yeah, it was a bit of an accident as well. They found me at the time. Restaurants were not big digital marketers. This is the early 2000s, and by and large, restaurants were mass marketers. They did a lot of television. They did a lot of out of home. They did a lot of print media. They didn't really do. They didn't do a whole lot of digital marketing, at least not effective digital marketing. So when Wendy's was looking for someone to start a digital marketing practice, they found me in the agency world who was doing digital marketing for tech companies, actually. So it was an accident. And when we boiled it down, it was one of those things that I saw a great brand that really hadn't told its story, especially through digital
Mm-hmm.
platforms, and had a great history that you could leverage. And that resulted in me finding my way into the restaurant world. I did grow up working in restaurants. My dad ran restaurants when I was a kid, but I never thought I'd find my way back there. So it was one of those crazy things that, the world
Yeah.
sort of does to you.
No, it always comes around and gets you to the same position where you had to be, probably. Now, when you think about last 10 years or more than that you've spent in food industry, if you look back, would you want to trade into some other industry, or you're happy with the industry of choice which you have? Because there's so much of undone and not done in food industry till date, as I look at it.
So I don't know yet. I mean, I think I will say I don't particularly want to be typecast as just a restaurant guy. So it wouldn't shock me if in the next few years I decide, I want to do this or I want to do that. But there is a lot still to be done in restaurants. Restaurants are still pretty bad at digital marketing and marketing in general across the board, especially the mid-sized players. And you got some of the really big guys like Burger King that they do a really good job generally.
Domino's, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are players that they got it down. In fact, they're some of the best, mass marketers in the planet, and in some cases, some of the best digital marketers on the planet. But when you get down to it, there's a lot of restaurants that people love, and they're just not using digital platforms effectively right now, especially marketing digital platforms. So I think there's still a lot of room there if I want to stay through it. Having said that, the world is a big place, so I never want to say this is the end.
So when you look at people looking to start their careers, there are a lot of folks who are thinking about starting their careers in marketing. What piece of advice would you give? Stick to one industry or take a variety of them? Because you did work on the agency before you stepped into Wendy's in Euros, if I pronounced it right.
Yeah.
So what would be
Yes.
your advice?
Yeah, so Gyro was a creative agency, but primarily dealt with B2B and tech. So it was actually a really big change to go to a large restaurant chain from what I was working on previously. I would say get good at something that's a little more universally applied. I think the industry can be important. You can certainly become a key player where you're known to do this thing in this space. But the kind of the skill set is more critical. So, what I became known for was digital and especially social media marketing. And happened to be a wonderful time because when I was at Gyro, Twitter was invented and Facebook, became a thing. And so as my clients and the clients that were connected to us across the world had needs around social and digital, I was the guy they called because I was the guy who played with it and understood it a little. And I didn't take a class, I didn't whatever. I just used the stuff. And when someone said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing a webcast," and I would say, they'd pull me in the room and I said, "Well, you could use this kind of technology because it would allow for this, this, and this, and you could also stream it on this platform." It was just second nature. So I actually think getting good at a specific skill set is a little more useful than being good in an industry. Time in industry is valuable though, because fundamentally, especially operators need you to speak the language. So if you can't talk about costs and you can't talk about safety procedures, you don't understand processes to roll things out, that can be very detrimental to your ability to be successful. But I think the skill set is more important.
What kind of skill sets in marketing though? Is it more data? Is it being more creative? Or is it thinking differently?
I think it's pick what you're good at, or what you love. I was always a what drives attention and can be scaled kind of guy. So I was interested in creative that I thought had mass appeal, but was very differentiated. So creative is kind of the thing that gets me really excited. And then what like fuels that excitement for me anyways is creative that has reach, that can scale. So I think you have to pick the thing that makes you excited. I know a lot of marketers that their thing is product development. That's all they care about. I know a lot of marketers that all they care about is design. I know a lot of marketers that all they care about is media. I know a lot of marketers, they just want the tickets. So it's all about partnerships, whatever, figure out the thing that makes you excited and you got to build on that thing. For me, it's usually creative that gets attention is the starting point. And I love, I'm one of those nerds who loves like, goofy movies and if you want to make me happy, throw on a Wes Anderson movie. That's it. Just something that's
Okay.
not totally niche, but is a little bit weird, a little bit off. Disney usually puts a bad taste in my mouth. I like things that are different and a little bit weird and a little bit strange. And I loved like Thor Ragnarok was amazing,
Yeah.
for Marvel that was something that was so different and weird and strange. And Guardians of the Galaxy was amazing, but Avengers not really into that sort of thing. So I think you got to find the thing that makes you excited and build on that thing, and you can learn the other stuff. Like, I bought billions of dollars worth of television, but I'm not that interested in television because to me, if I can find something that works really well in an interactive platform like social, you
Yeah.
can use a nugget of that to build out a 15-second TV spot easily. So why not do the thing that's more compelling and then scale it in with the other stuff? So I think find what makes you excited and then learn the rest if you're able.
So the creative, social, goofy came about in the Wendy roasting a lot, uh, and that was a big hit. And you got a lot of accolades for that as well. How, t- when- I did discuss this previously in the conference conversation, but after the conversation, also I was thinking, how did you pull it off in front of executives who were very different? And you did mention restaurants are not your atypical. They believe in their brand and they have a patronage, which are customers. So,
Before I let Brandon share Wendy's story, to set the context, let me share some of the roast tweets that Wendy's team executed on Twitter to its followers or who tweeted on Wendy's handle. Thank you to watchmojo.com. Two of the sample conversations are: the first one, Burger King isn't the only chain that Wendy's took to despise. McDonald's is the biggest restaurant franchisee in the entire world. Yet, that didn't stop Wendy's from brutally attacking their reputation. It seems as if they just didn't respect their elders. So, when one user knowingly took a shot at Wendy's asking them to find their nearest McDonald's, Wendy's simply responded with a picture of a trash can. It's hard to say what's funnier, the message of the tweet itself or the fact that Wendy's couldn't even be bothered to write anything. Either way, it was damn funny. And a second one, Wendy's often tried to save their customers' base from what they see as a horror that is McDonald's. However, their customers just weren't listening to them. A Twitter user was intentionally egging Wendy's on when he directly asked them how much a Big Mac cost. Wendy's wasn't in the mood for another company's dollars and cents and shot back with two quick words: your dignity. It's a hilarious answer and it burns deeper than.
And I think past that, everyone thinks they know marketing. Everyone sees commercials and are like, I understand marketing. I know which commercials make me laugh. So really the trick was starting with the strategy. So people in the CEO role and CFO role and other roles that are very influential for a marketer tend to be very logical people. They tend to be, you have to build a case for everything. So every investment you make in every company, its merits are considered on its return on the investment, right? So for that reason, you have to be very logical in the way you build a case. And that's not the way a lot of marketers, especially marketers who are interested in creative, actually think. They think more about what's interesting and what will gain attention and what will have virality and all these things versus what is logical that
mhm.
sells in, an approach. So I found the magic was creating the strategic framework that justified the thing that would get attention. And I don't say justified meaning like, Jimmy rig it. That's not what I mean at all. I mean like legitimately, you find your way to the execution because it has sound strategic foundations. So an example there is, the big example for Wendy's was, we started with a brand that was about 10 years in traffic decline, 10 years in pretty significant sales decline, and people were a bit desperate. A new CEO came in, they brought in a lot of new people. I was part of that kind of generation of people who came into Wendy's when it was in really rough shape, and there was no kind of
baseline
baggage associated with taking a little bit of risk. Because a lot of companies like that are very risk averse. We were doing 7 billion or something in sales worldwide at the time, and I came in, and that's a lot to put at risk, right? Even though it was declining, it was still a lot.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of a function, a bit of an attitude that it's worth taking a few risks. What my team did in the holistic marketing department, wasn't just me, did a bunch of work to understand what is the true position of the brand. And really what we came back to was, in the 1980s, Where's the Beef established the brand. It established the challenger nature of the brand. Wendy's was the first company to call out other competitors on a serious stage like that. You think about like Pepsi Challenge and all these things. We said everyone else's burgers were terrible on national television, in 1984. It was unreal. So it was a big moment where it actually changed the culture. And by the way, that commercial only ran for a few months. It was a very short-lived moment, yet it defined, in my view, and in a lot of people's views at Wendy's, even Wendy herself, Wendy Thomas is a franchisee, the namesake. It helped define the challenger nature of the brand. And that challenger thing lived deep in the soul of the brand. But the problem is, most garbage marketers don't understand that it's okay to be different than everyone else. So their view was, you can't call out competitors. That's just not, it's not done. It's not professional to do that. You can't call out other brands. You can't be snarky. You have to be what everyone else is. Everyone can accept vanilla. The problem is vanilla never stands out. So we had to say, well, what is this brand? So this brand is a challenger. If this brand is a challenger, well, what are the platforms that we can start with a challenge? What are the platforms we can actually establish this challenger mentality? And it quickly came out that social media was one of those platforms. We started really in Twitter before anywhere else. And that led us to justifying the position. And it was hard at first. I got calls from board members. I got calls from my CEO. I went through 3 CMOs while I was there. And all of them at one point asked me to pull back. And I didn't. And the reason I didn't was because it always worked. And when I made the logic case that said, remember, our strategy is be a challenger. Remember, we have called out brands for decades. It's okay if we beat up a little bit on Burger King, as long as we're not being, total jerks about it.
Yeah.
Remember, this is in a small forum that we're testing and learning in. Remember, this thing now just made the cover of BuzzFeed. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, we can live with this. We can live with that. I was told to fire people. I was told all kinds of things over my tenure there. But in the end, it became the marketing. The marketing became the challenger brand again, and I think reestablished the brand. So it wasn't easy, but really it was making sure that you had ready the logic. You can't defend a marketing position to a CEO or a CFO with emotion. It doesn't work. It only works to use logic, because that's how they think.
Yeah. And I have a personal experience working with quite a few of them, and logic takes over emotions and creative every time.
It does. That's how it works. You can have a great ad, but if it doesn't add up to something bigger for the business, it means nothing. And that's the way it should be. If that didn't exist in a business, most businesses would fail. If businesses were purely run on emotion, we wouldn't have a lot of businesses that stick around.
For sure.
So it's a good thing. You need the emotion, but in the end, you need a balance of the logic and the emotion. And that's really the role I think marketers play against folks like CEOs and CFOs.
Now, when I look at your career, you've had amazing experience working with some of the largest brands, Wendy's and now Potbelly, and between that, you also work with a few other brands. Are there common threads which you see across these experiences, or were they all different?
Yeah, I think the most common thread is it takes longer than you think to break through. Most people think there's like a magic bullet, which when you see like people being snarky on Twitter on day one when they're hired, like, you don't know if that's right for your brand. You have no idea. You just saw something somebody else did and you just copied it. So I think that the biggest thing is most people don't realize that it's not a switch you flip. There's research, then there's testing, and you're going to miss more targets than you hit. And then ultimately, when you start to break through, and you don't always break through, by the way. I wasn't long enough at one of my jobs. My job previous to this, I was only at for a year, and we never broke through in that year. And I left because I didn't see there was going to be a hope to break through in the next year. Wow. So you have to make sure that you understand that it takes time. So when I agree to join a company, I'm usually doing it under a contract. because I have to be very clear to people that, this takes time. It's not going to happen in 3 months. And if it does happen in 3 months, it's luck. It's not because we did it by, maybe we did the right thing here and there, but the truth is it's luck. So I think the biggest threat is people don't realize the work it takes, and, I'm not an exercise guy, but when you ask somebody like, how'd you get so big or how'd you get so strong? Never the answer is, I went to the gym yesterday. It's I went to the gym for the last 2 years. That's how they get big and strong. So I think it's harder and it takes longer than people realize.
So we'll switch gears a little bit and we'll go into the little bit of personal life, if you don't mind. So Brandon, you've had amazing experience and you've had a great career. How's family helped you shape your life and your career? And how do you think you as an individual have evolved through that relationship?
Yeah. So I'm married to my high school sweetheart. I met her when she was 16 and I was 15. So we've been together. I'm 40 now. So we've been together a long, long time.
That's beautiful.
I have 2 teenage kids. I have a 14 and an 11-year-old, and I have a 1-year-old. So might as well start over. Got some babysitters. Let's keep going, right? The way they've really the way my family has really helped my career and helped me develop is empathy. I think being a dad, being a parent, being even a new father again, it really teaches you to look at things through other people's eyes. And the key, I think, to great marketers and great marketing is understanding others' points of view. If you only judge things based on your personal point of view, whether you like the thing or not, you can't judge what's actually going to be successful. I mentioned, I like goofy movies. Like I love Wes Anderson movies. Most people don't like Wes Anderson movies. So they don't. My wife hates Wes Anderson movies. But so I know that if I'm trying to sell something to her, I can't use a Wes Anderson movie as part of the thing that, pulls it in.
Yeah.
So that's just a simple example of you have to understand your audience. I'm perfectly comfortable putting work in the world that I don't understand or that I don't relate to or that doesn't actually encourage me to do the thing I want the consumer to do, as long as I understand the point of view and through research or through partners, I understand the point of view. So I think the biggest thing is just empathy. It is hard to not learn empathy and be a even serviceable parent. That's number one. I think number two is, my wife has been awesome that she's chosen for me to be accessible and move cities every 3 or 4 years if I need to, and be on calls at 7:00 at night, 3 nights a week. She's chosen to give up her career. And that's crazy, that she was willing to do that. She was a teacher and loved it and stopped doing that because we couldn't handle that and my craziness. And, at the time I said, we'll hire an au pair. We'll do whatever we need to do. We'll figure it out, because I wanted her to be happy. But she said, no, you know what? I want to be able to make sure we have dinner together every night, even if it means you're going to walk out after half an hour and get back on another call. I wanted to make sure that if we move to a new city, I can settle the kids in months instead of a year, because I'm there all the time to help do this thing and be the kind of rock for the family. So I think it's empathy and the fact that they make it possible for me to do the crazy things that I do, which is an amazing gift. It really is. A lot of people aren't willing to do that.
I heard the second time about empathy and how family teaches you to embrace empathy from you. The second time I heard this from another gentleman. His name is Ashish Prakanza, whom I had a conversation in the same podcast. And he also spoke about how he, after getting married and having kid, empathy was one of the things which he learned. And I can relate to it. I have 2 sons.
It's a big deal. You gotta learn how to see things from their perspective, or you just can't function as a working family, I would argue.
Yeah.
It's very important.
And you also are part of a volunteering experience, and you've done that with Camp Casson. What's it all about?
Yeah, so one of the big principles that was instilled in me while I was at Wendy's was give back. That was one of Dave Thomas's big things. And Wendy, his daughter, was a huge champion of that. So it was
Yeah.
always you got to cut out a percentage of your time, a percentage of your wealth, a percentage of your effort, a percentage of your life to make sure you're giving back in some way, shape, or form. And we kind of churned through a bunch of potential ways to do that as a family. And the reason there's the gap between my two kids is my wife actually had breast cancer. So, 5-6 years ago, while I was at Wendy's, actually, she got breast cancer, fought it for a year and a half, got through it. Thank God that she's healthy and doing great. And I'd argue healthier now than she ever has been. So it's a full recovery and then some. And we saw what happens to families when cancer happens. And, at the time I was working a lot and having to work from home and come back and forth. And I had young kids, my kids were, 5-6 years old at the time. And the toll it takes on a family is absolutely unreal. I had no idea. And I don't think you ever had any idea when a thing like that happens, what the true impact is. And during the process of it, we came across this group that does summer camps for kids whose families are affected by cancer. And I vividly remember as we were looking around for charitable things, but also thinking about our own family and what are the things that we can do to help our kids who are young and going through this terrible experience. What they really needed is just to be around other kids, be able to talk about it, be able to have fun and disconnect in an environment where they could also work through some of the things that they can't talk to their parents about, that they don't understand. And this was an organization that did that and did it amazingly effectively. So my kids, up until this year got canceled because of the virus stuff. But up until this year, they've gone to the camp, I think, for 4 years. And we help them charitably, and we try to raise awareness of this group. It's college kids that put on a camp that's all for people who are affected by cancer. Kids that are affected by cancer and their family, either they had it or most likely their parents or their grandparents were affected. So I think it's just an amazing cause, and the way it's run is great. And the organization, because it's run by college kids, actually helps a whole generation build empathy and give back in a way that a lot of organizations don't do. So I definitely suggest, if you've never heard of Camp Kesem, KESEM, check them out online. If you know somebody who's been affected by cancer, it's actually an excellent, excellent program.
Definitely, I'll look it up and I'll post a link when I post this podcast too.
Great, appreciate that.
Not a problem. You spoke about empathy, and you spoke about how kids have allowed you to understand others' perspectives. So have you imbibed that in your leadership skills, or how do you look up to your teams?
Yeah, so by nature, I'm actually very introverted. So I'm not the kind of person that wants to go to parties, wants to the mandatory fun at work kills me a little bit. I understand it, and I think the biggest thing I learned from my kids is not everybody is like me. I have a son who is very extroverted. I have a daughter who's just like me. She's my spitting image, and my wife is very extroverted. She needs to be around people. So, and so does my son. And I think the thing I learned most from them was some ways to accommodate extroverts and make them feel welcome, and make them feel because they need it. They need that fuel to go, right? And because I love talking about marketing, I come off at work usually as pretty extroverted. And it tended to confuse people that I was very animated when I talked about work. And then as soon as I walked out the door, I was gone. And I didn't go to happy hours, and I didn't want to do the thing at the bowling alley. And I didn't like it. And what I learned was I got to do some of that stuff. And even if it means that I just suck it up for an hour and a half, and people know me enough now that they know Brandon's going to be here for the first drink, and then odds are he's going to say, "Hey guys, have fun. We'll see you later." Because I just run out of steam. So I think that's the biggest thing it taught me about leadership, my kids especially, is you have to accommodate for other people's styles and what they need. And in your own world, if you aren't good at understanding others' point of views, what you tend to do is just say, well, if I like it, everybody's going to like it. And that's just not the way it is.
That's just beautiful. to accommodate extroverts. And how do you mentor people? So taking a further lead from there, how do you mentor people? So now you spoke about extroverts, getting them involved, but it
Yeah.
involves a lot of mentorship to balance things out also.
Yeah. So I'm not very good at that either yet. It's something I'm working on. I think my tendency is to believe that you know what you're doing and try to coach you to make sure you know what you're doing. But I don't hire people because I'm going to teach them how to do something. I hire somebody
Okay.
because they're going to do something for the organization.
Mm.
So when I bring someone in, my expectation is they're going to scare me. My expectation is they're going to come up with things that I would have never thought of. My expectation is I'm going to be their champion. My job is to make sure that the stuff in their head gets in the world.
Okay.
I had a great creative that I worked with at VML through Wendy's, a guy named Chris, who used to say his job was to get out of the way of the good ideas. And that's
Mm.
kind of my thing is that's how I kind of function. And the flaw to that is people who want and need a heavier hand and want and need mentorship. I struggle with a little bit, and I shouldn't, but I do. And so it's just something I've been working on. And it really, over the last, I would say 3 or 4 years, I've been complimented that I'm getting better. And what I am told from the folks that I have mentored or have had some sort of relatively formal mentoring kind of scenario with through the office or whatever, is that the best way for me to do that is to show them what works
Yeah.
and help them through solving problems. And I'm okay with that. That doesn't bother me at all. So I needed the structure of that and the feedback of that to help me mentor people, because I don't like sitting in front of a person and saying, you should do this, or I did it this way, so you should do it this way, or
Yeah.
whatever. It's more, I found that my method that works better is listening. And when they ask for advice, give advice. And when they are in a position where they have a tough decision to make, walk them through the logic, but don't give them the answer. So I would argue it's something I'm still working on. And the people who've told me that they looked up to me as a mentor, I didn't usually even know I was mentoring them. They were just they'd come to me and ping
It
me
was
and say, I'm
natural.
trying to work through this. And I'd
Mm.
help them through whatever the thing is. And not even realizing I'm helping them. I'm just having a conversation. And then later, in a company meeting or something, they're like, well, thank you, Brandon, for the mentorship in this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We talked 4 times,
Mm.
about this thing you were working on. But I think when it sneaks up on me, I'm better at it, is the short answer.
Okay. And is the reverse possible, or have you thought about whom do you look up to, or who's your mentor or coach?
Yeah. So usually I'm looking at people more um, for attitude and for
Mm-hmm.
how they approach situations, and a little less
Okay.
on how they do the thing. And I've actually learned the most from people that I disliked, actually. I mean, it sounds crazy, but I've had a few bosses. I've had some people that I've worked with that everybody's got that, right? People
Yeah.
that just they don't jive with them. Either they strategically disagree with the direction that they bring to bear, or they disagree with their methods, or they disagree with what they define as their ethics or morality or whatever.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from people that I've quit working for,
Okay.
because and it's not necessarily how not to do something. It's usually like, this is the outcome that happens when you do it this way.
Mm.
So I mean, a good example is I think back to one boss that I had that I did not see eye to eye with almost ever. And as I think back on what he did, I learned more from him than just about anybody else I've ever worked for, because I saw what he did and what the outcome was. And I've used the things. And sometimes looking back, I look at it, I'm like, now I understand why you did it that way. And
Mm.
I might even do the same thing. But at the time, I remember violently being in disagreement, being like, are you nuts? Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure that the individual articulated the reasons in a way that I could comprehend it, or maybe I was too stubborn to comprehend it. I don't know. But I haven't had a whole lot of formal mentors. It's been very informal. I really look up to people that they're very consistent. They have a good brand that you understand, what decision they're going to make based on their past.
Mm.
So those are the people I've probably learned the most from overall. My mom is that way. My mom is a principal of a school, so she runs a
Okay.
Catholic school. She's the most empathetic human being I've ever met in my life. No question. She can understand a raging parent and then 30 seconds later understand a 6-year-old that's upset. And
Oh,
I have never seen a human being be able to shift like that. And she always understands the intention behind it, which is the fascinating thing, right? Because the 6-year-old is upset and the mom is upset, and you think they're for the same reason, but they're not.
not.
The mom's upset because everyone sees her. I don't know. I'm just talking here, but it's because everyone is seeing the panic that's happening with the 6-year-old and is embarrassed. The kid's upset because they messed something up and they actually hurt the feelings of the teacher they liked, and she connect with that like instantly. And I've admired that so much, that she understands the motives underneath and the desires, so she can get the outcome much more efficiently. So I guess I take that back. My mentor is my mom. How's that?
No, that's the great mentor to have.
Yeah.
So 22 years now working. If I give you a time machine, you spoke about Marvel, and I know you hate Avengers, but there is a part where they go back and they try to do certain things which probably can change or help them change or get back certain things. But let's say if I give you the time machine and I say, Brandon, you have a choice. You can either reduce the time it took you where you are today by half, or you can say, no, if I go back, I would live through it the same way I would have done it till date. What would be your choice, V?
Yeah, I think if you asked me this moment, I would say I probably wouldn't do anything different. I've made some
Okay.
decisions that I look back on that, a year after I would have said, I really wish I wouldn't have done that. But 3 or 4 years later, I'm like, I learned something so valuable that if that wouldn't have happened to me, I couldn't have made this decision I'm about to make. Um, so I think there have certainly been moments where I look back and say, I wish I would have done something differently, but usually it's closer into the event. I don't think I would change anything. I had people ask me, I don't have an MBA. I've had people ask me all the time, why don't you go back and get your MBA? You can't get a job at X, like P&G or whatever, because you don't have an MBA. And so for years, I asked myself, should I do this? And then I had kids, and I'm like, I can't do this while I'm doing this. And I'm working 80 hours a week, and I'm going to Ad Week and giving a talk, and I'm doing this at South by Southwest. And I was to the point where I was like, I don't have enough time to have a family and do my job well and go back to school at the same time. I'd love people who do. I just didn't, or I didn't feel like I did. And I've gone back a bunch. And over the last 2 or 3 years, I've gotten to the point where I'm like, you know what? I don't want to work for a company that wouldn't hire me because of the work I've done.
Yeah.
If I've done something, I've put something in the world that my team, was lauded by Adweek, Ad Age, Lions, Can, moved a business, grew a business. If that's not the thing you're actually going for, if instead you're trying to hire the whatever MBA, I actually don't want to work for you. So maybe it's a coping mechanism, but I think there are a lot of things that I would have questioned closer in, but now I don't. So no, I love where I'm at. I love what I'm doing. I don't know if I'll be doing what I'm doing in a year or 2 years or 3 years, but it's been an awesome ride, and I'm just going to keep riding the ride. Do good work and good things happen has been my experience thus far.
Yeah. Pedigree or degree doesn't define people's success. I've seen the other way around also. People who had amazing degrees, they've not done well.
I have replaced 2 Harvard MBAs at this point in their jobs. So at this point, I felt pretty good when both those moments happened. I'm like, you know what? There's something to the work. So do the work. And the rest, if you get an MBA from Harvard, awesome. You're going to get an easier time getting an interview. I guarantee it early on. But once you're further in your career, just do good work, and everything else tends to happen. That's wonderful.
So on the closing thought, anything else you would like to share with the audience, which I may have not covered, or you would love to share with people?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is the work is what matters at the end of the day. You don't see my name splashed over a lot of things. I'll do things like this, and I'll give a quote to whoever wants to talk about us because we did good work. But the work is what really matters. In the end, nobody sees your PowerPoints. Nobody sees those in the real world. And you may feel like you won when your CEO or your CMO, whoever bought an idea from you. You haven't done anything yet. Until the work is in the world, you haven't accomplished a single thing. And to me, that's liberating. What that means is you focus on the work and doing really good work, and stay true to what you know will work and what the research tells you will work. And ultimately, you're going to win. So just do good work, and don't worry about the garbage that gets you to the good work. As long as you get to the work, it's all good.
Great. Great point. And on that note, Brandon, thanks for taking time out. I know you are busy right now, so really appreciate you doing this.
No problem. Happy to be here, and thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening in. And we close yet another episode of Masters Decoded. If you've enjoyed the episode, please, you can help us out by sharing it on social media. I would personally appreciate that. It's how we can reach more listeners, and the more listeners we have, the more awesome guests I can get in touch and convince to participate in these conversations that are a joy to have for me, and I hope they are a joy for you to listen as well. You can also help a lot leaving reviews on iTunes or your podcast service of choice. Reviews are surprisingly helpful in supporting the podcast to get to more listeners. If this episode has intrigued you, I would request you to subscribe to the podcast to stay up to date and get notified to the future episodes. With that, I bid you and see you in the next episode.